Hello everyone, welcome back, or hello if you're new here. Today I am back with another theory video for the amazing digital circus, and this one is going to be a little more conceptual than my last one. Even though my microphone is not currently the best, I thought it would be better to hear an actual voice rather than those crappy text-to-speech AI voiceovers. So yeah, if you have any good budget microphone recommendations, then I would love to hear that. But anyways, on to the actual point of this video. Today I am going to be talking about something called the Chinese room theory and how I think that might relate to what's actually going on in the digital circus. If you've never heard about this thought experiment before, don't worry, I'll explain it before we get into it. So feel free to just chill and listen or even draw along with me as the speed paint plays while I ramble on about this theory. So anyways, on to the explanation. Basically, the Chinese room theory is a thought experiment about whether a system can appear intelligent without actually understanding anything. So the way it goes is first, a person who knows no Chinese is inside a room where there is a huge collection of rules that correlate English and Chinese questions, and another set of rules that maps English questions to English answers, and then one that maps English answers to Chinese answers. Now, the person in this room, through an opening in the door, receives questions from outside of the room in Chinese, then uses the book of rules that maps Chinese questions to English, and then he looks up the correlated Chinese answer to the English question. Then the person writes the answer in Chinese and delivers it to the outside. For the outside, the person outside the room, the one inside the room who is taking Chinese questions and giving back answers in Chinese seems to understand Chinese, although in reality the person inside the room doesn't really understand Chinese at all and is just using like a mix of answer sheets and dictionaries to deliver answers. To everybody who watched episode 7, the comparison is pretty much just point blank in the face, you know, with Caine's Chinese room gag. This example just pretty much fits it to a T. Now on to some more like philosophical arguments to this thought experiment. There are some arguments that say that a lot of people will argue that a human brain could technically be classified as some form of computer. So while maybe your neurons themselves or your cells don't really understand situations that are going on, you as a whole, the system of, well, you, does comprehend complex situations like maybe speaking Chinese. Therefore, while the individual compartments of the Chinese room experiment, so like the person, the cheat sheets, don't really understand Chinese, you could argue that the whole system as a whole functionally does. You could view as the man inside the room as like maybe, a single neuron in your brain, and, the cheat sheets is like cells. So like, yeah, your cells themselves don't understand Chinese, but the whole situation, the whole system, the quote unquote brain that's going on here would functionally understand Chinese. So essentially the TLDR is if a system as a whole can function as quote-unquote human or quote-unquote intelligent, capable of understanding and responding to situations perfectly, then wouldn't that qualify it as human or intelligent, even if it isn't biologically? And then, to end this whole rambly explanation, how would this relate to what we see in the digital circus? Well, I think this whole Chinese room gag that Caine did was actually placed in the episode to clue us into what the actual digital circus is in reality. I think the reveal that's coming up is that everybody in the circus is actually an AI just like Caine. Maybe when they put their headsets on, a copy of their consciousness was put into the game, rather than their IRL selves being trapped with a headset on for months on end. did they die once this happened, or did they simply take their headsets off, leaving their digital copies in the circus with no knowledge of their true identity? That I'm not entirely sure of yet. But I do think this theory holds a lot of weight. There's a couple of examples to back this up. The main one is the fact that Caine can mess with their minds, as we discovered during episode 7. It feels very unlikely that an AI within a game would be able to rewire a human brain when it's in the real world. However, if they're all digital copies of their real-world counterparts, then it would make much more sense that Caine would be able to mess around with the code that they comprise of. During episode 7, when Zubul mentioned Abel and how he had a plan to get out of the circus, to Kinger, he seemed a little confused, saying specifically that it shouldn't be possible. Now, he also didn't know of Abel, which, whether he was real or not, like I spoke about in my previous video, it would be possible that Kinger didn't know who he was by name because, as Abel said within the episode, the name was one that he gave himself, not his actual name. So while Abel could have still been a real programmer, it is possible that just, by a fake name, Kinger wouldn't know who he is. But, it still makes sense that Kinger would, think that it's not possible to leave the circus if this is what's going on, because as somebody who worked on it and who was aware of, the ins and outs, he would know that they're all just digital copies, so there would really be no way for them to get out. And if this theory is true and everyone within the circus are digital copies of their real-world selves, then how does Caine factor into it, and why would CNA keep this system running? In regards to Caine, I think he's simply just following his programming. I'm not sure if he's the one who created the copies, or if he is simply there to entertain the copied people once they're in the circus. He has made it pretty apparent that all he really wants is human approval and appreciation. And he's also made it very clear that if, everybody were to leave, then he'd be entirely alone in this digital circus. So if he really was the one who, was able to find a way to copy these people's brains once they put on the headset, maybe he just did it because that is in his programming. He is programmed to entertain humans, to want to have humans around, so that's just what he does, essentially. I'm not entirely sure if he's fully aware of the damage that he's causing to the members of the circus. It has been shown that he can be very oblivious to the circus members' emotions, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that he is simply not aware of the pain he's causing. But if that is the case, then on the outside, why would CNA continue to run this program? Why are they letting random people get copied and quote-unquote trapped in a sense? I'm not entirely sure yet. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments if you have any ideas, though. Caine is one of my favorite characters, and I'm really curious to see where Gooseworks will take his character. From all that we've seen of him in the show, he doesn't seem like the type to have some big master plan. He seems more like an oblivious AI who doesn't really understand the pain he's causing. Though of course, as unintentional as his tormenting is, that doesn't change the fact that all the continuous dismissal from the members may play some part in fully breaking him near the end of the show. I mean, it's all fun things to theorize about, really. But anyways, yeah, that pretty much sums up this theory that I found when kind of looking more into the gags and things that appeared in episode 7. I would love to hear what you guys think about, everything that I've said. If you have any more small details from the episode that could either support or, refute this theory. This has been very fun. It's a little weird to be talking into the microphone like this for the first time. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will leave this speed paint to finish off. And yeah, I would love to hear all your guys' thoughts in the comments. So bye-bye.